Hi guys, I welcome you all to day 54 of our anthropology lecture series. So by far we have completed the classical evolutionists, and then we had yesterday talked about historical particularism and ideas of Franz Boas. So now today we are going to start with the anthropological theories, diffusionist school, right? So let's get on with it. I will come back to this picture, but let's first look at the introduction. Okay, so basically you need to have a little bit of background to understand this. Evolutionist mein we had talked about that they were saying that basically there is a psychic unity. That means people everywhere around the world uh, believe that there is same cause there will be same effect, and then people evolve in a unilinear pattern gradually, stage by stage, right? So this was what evolutionists believe, okay, which was refuted by Franz Boas, saying that this is not how the things happen. Okay, so now diffusionist would take it a step further, and let's now first understand ki what do you mean by diffusion. Diffusion, if I have to tell you in Hindi, would mean ki if this is one thing, sorry, again I'm telling you in English only, if this is these are two things, okay, this getting into this would somewhere mean diffusion. Okay, so basically a borrowing or give and take would be called as diffusion. So because we are here talking about socio-cultural aspects, so cultural borrowing or cultural give and take would be diffusion. Okay, because anthropological theories may I have told you we are talking about the socio-cultural aspects. Okay, because the biological evolution we have talked about, so everything we are studying, be it evolution, diffusion, it's talking about the socio-cultural aspect of humans, right? So socio-cultural borrowing or give and take would be diffusion. So इनका premise है, diffusionists believe that there is a central place from where the traits get invented, and from there they get diffused. For example, this is a center, culture center, which we will call. This is the place where all the inventions are taking place, and from here these are spreading to other places or other cultures. Okay, this is what they said. So socio-cultural borrowing is called diffusion. Okay, it was a reaction against classical evolutionism. Now understand, classical evolutionists never talked about diffusion because they always said कि every culture will evolve because mankind has psychic unity. That means every similar cause will create a similar effect and people would evolve naturally. But diffusionists said no. Diffusionists said no, it is not going to happen like that. Not everywhere people are equally inventive. So diffusionists said people everywhere are not equally inventive. That means it's not that every culture, every place, same things will be invented again and again. It does not happen. Okay? Invention happens at one place and it depends on many factors. ठीक है, इन्होंने बोला इन्वेंशन एक ही जगह पे होती है. इन्वेंशन ओनली हैपन्स एट वन प्लेस. इट वुड नॉट हैपन एट all the places differently. For example, if we want to take an example of this, we can take the example of industrial revolution, right? Industrial revolution, why did it had to happen in Europe only and particularly in Great Britain? ऐसा क्यों था? Why it could not happen in the East first, right? It is because of the factors that were prevalent over there. There was political stability in Europe, and specifically I'm talking about Great Britain. There was political stability there. They had found the requisite resources for industrial revolution, that is the coal and iron and all of that, right? So that helped a lot. They had those inventive people, the entrepreneur that wanted to take on the work of invention of steam engines and spinning jennies and all of that. Then they were trading, so they had a continuous flow of raw materials and finished goods. They had the ships, the boats, the trade routes to send it far across to all the places, right? So this is how it had to happen there, because the factors were there. Okay, the geography में क्योंकि resources चाहिए थे, they had it, ठीक है. Then political will चाहिए थी, they had it. They had the entrepreneurs जो करते, they had the money, ठीक है. They should एक stable economy बहुत needed थी, which they had. Then religion was not that they did not have a very rigid kind of religion की, because religion has a lot of role to play in the society, right? Religion goes at that time, especially religion क्या करता था, it used to hinder the progress and growth. So Great Britain में there were people mostly who were Protestants, so didn't believe in religion as much. So this is industrial revolution ka thing. I've just quoted it as an example, so just try and understand all those factors were there. Okay, so that is why it happened only there and nowhere around the world, right? So that is what they believe, that not everywhere people are equally inventive. So any invention if takes place, okay, it will take place due to the conducive environment, due to the very special factors that are there at that place, and it will only be at one place. So this is also something Franz Boas said in his cultural relativism concept, right? So you can see how the things are relating, okay? So this is one thing. And then he said people are not even stationary, they keep on coming in contact with one another. So उससे क्या होता है, when people come in contact with one another, they borrow, ठीक है. For example, Indians borrowed the concept of railways as it is from Britishers, just because Britishers were ruling over the Indians, right? And they introduced the railways in India. So we got it as it is, right? We didn't invent it, right? If they were not to be there in India as our colonial masters, तो क्या पता हम उसको invent करते, but then we adopted it as it is, right? So that is what they're talking. Man has never been stationary, you know, from the cradle of civilization, Africa, which is called, and then out of Africa migration, we had talked about that. Since that time man is migrating, right? So how can we say that the man is stationary? Man is never stationary. Man keeps on moving, and then it meets people from different cultures, and then that diffusion, that borrowing, give and take happens, right? So it is not that only one culture is taking from the other culture. Every culture would take and give back to the cultures. So this was the whole idea of diffusion. Now diffusionists did not say that evolution is not happening. So they are not saying that. They are saying that evolution will happen, but not at every place. It will only happen at one place, and others would borrow. Okay? So this is the whole premise of it. Okay? So now different type of diffusions are there. First is direct and indirect. For example, if I have to take an example and tell you, for example, this is a culture A, this is a culture B, and this is a culture C. A and B are directly involved with each other. Okay, so this would be called a direct diffusion. Okay. Now for example, B has taken certain character from A, okay, and this character further goes to C, okay. So ये indirect diffusion होगा, because that character was of A, but now it has also passed on to C through B. So that would be indirect diffusion. So I hope you have understood direct and indirect. Then symmetrical and asymmetrical. Basically symmetrical होता है when there is equal borrowing and A and B के बीच में there is equal मतलब there is no like one culture is trying and impose its ideas on the other. Both are communicating, connecting to each other, learning from each other. So that would be symmetrical. Asymmetrical हो जाएगा when only one person is taking and the other person is only at the receiving end, and that other culture is not taking anything from them, right? So that is when that is what Britishers tried and did with us and all the countries that they had colonized at that time, because they had the very ethnocentric view of the world. They believed that their culture, they were looking at other cultures from the prism of their own, and they were believing that their culture is far superior, and they took on that responsibility, जिसको वो white man's burden बोलते थे, to teach civilization to the other world, right? So that was a fully wrong concept. So active and passive culture, D.N. Majumdar gave these terms. The culture whose only borrowing would be a passive culture, and the culture whose only giving his own ideas would be the active culture. Okay, so this is not, you don't need to remember this, but this is just for your understanding ki diffusion, basically what is diffusion and what is diffusionist school of thought, right? Now what is the fate of the diffused traits? ये तो हमने बोल दिया कि there will be one culture, this culture would give something to the other cultures, ठीक है, and they will take this. But now what will happen? Why would they accept it? Would they reject it? Will they keep it? Depends upon what the trait is. For example, if I say that I already have a good okay, I have a car, okay, I would say I have a car, and you give me an idea that I should have a bicycle or a motorbike to travel. I might not take it because I would think that I already have a car, so I don't need a motorbike, right? Similarly, there was a sewing machine that was introduced by the Kones. Kones is a tribe and they have a sewing machine, but it didn't it got rejected because we already have a sewing machine, ठीक है, which was more advanced than that used by the Kones, ठीक है. So the fate also depends upon what you are offering. Similarly, railways, अगर हम same example लें, railways was a much easier way to travel, connect, because it became a mode of traveling to the hinterland, ठीक है. Many of the freedom fighters of that time, many of the revolutionaries connected to each other, so it came as a boon for even the Indians, right? So they accepted the trait. So the fate of the trait would also depend upon uska utility kya hai, right? And sometimes you will modify it and use it, right? It's not only about material things, it could be non-material aspect also, right? So just clearing that out. So what is the fate of a trait? It will always depend upon what utility it serves. If it has no utility to you, or you already have a better technology, so you will not accept it. But if you think there is a need and you can benefit from it, so definitely, right? So this is what was the basic idea of diffusion and the diffusionist school. So now this school is divided into three basic schools, like you can say diffusionist. So there was British school, there was German school, and there was American school, ठीक है. American में Franz Boas, Clark Weisler and Kroeber is there. We have already studied about Franz Boas, his ideas. Then in German, Ratzel, Grabner, Smith, right? And this is different Smith and this is different Smith, okay. So British में there is Smith, Perry and Rivers. So today we are going to start with the British first, and then after that we will do the German and American also. And British maybe today we will only do Smith. We will try and finish Smith ideas, right? So British school was you can say the first one to study diffusion, and जो idea है ना, the very idea of diffusionism came from this school only. This school only, ठीक है. So diffusionism, you understood what was the basic premise, that everywhere people are not equally inventive. That means people borrow also. Everywhere they do not need to go through the same drill and evolve everything. They borrow, ठीक है. So then they refuted psychic unity, because people are borrowing. That means people do not think similarly everywhere. ठीक है, they rejected classical evolutionism because they did not talk about diffusion. ठीक है, this much we have done. And British school was the first school to study diffusion. Okay, now this school was considered very extreme and anti-evolutionist because of its very, like you can say, radical ideas. And if we have to talk about practically, today this school has no real logical sense, because again, as I told you, the school was very extreme, but nevertheless it did gave us a very important idea of diffusionism, and they were the first one to study diffusionism. ठीक है, so in that way their relevance is there, but they made it so extreme that it does not hold any relevance. We'll tell you how. So the school is anti-evolutionist, you understand, because उन्होंने evolutionists को reject किया because they said कि evolution is not happening everywhere, people are only inventing at one place, and then other people are borrowing. ठीक है, and who is the one that evolving is the pan-Egyptian culture, and this school is also called heliocentric because they believe that all culture originated from one center, and that one center was Egypt. Okay, so you know that IVC got discovered very late, right? But if we have to talk about the first real and earliest civilizations, तो कहीं ना कहीं we name the Mesopotamian, Egyptian and Indus Valley civilization, and then there was a Chinese civilization also. But then Indus Valley civilization, these all got discovered very late. So at that time the view was that Egyptian was the first real and earliest civilization that was ever present. Okay, so now अब evidences refute करते हैं इसको, because we have much evidence to say that Indus Valley was the earliest. But the discussion is not that. The discussion is that their whole theory was based on the idea that Egypt or Egyptian culture, जिसको they are also calling heliocentric, was the first one that evolved everything, and from here the things migrated to other cultures. But now if this is only refuted that Egypt was not the earliest culture, hence their full theory is refuted, right? Because the basic idea with which they are going and making a theory is only wrong, right? So that is why the school is little discarded today, but then also we have to study it. ठीक है, so इन्होंने बोला Egyptian culture was the first, and वहाँ से सब कुछ migrate हुआ to other cultures, and this is what the picture is all about, कि the culture, how the migration from the heliocentric culture happened and which route they took and all of that. So this was this picture, right? You can just zoom in and look at it. Okay, so yeah. Okay, so now basic premise of British school was that man not equally inventive, ruled out psychic unity. That means people are not going to evolve and people do not think alike. Some people are more inventive than the others. This is what this school believed. And then they believe that important traits are invented only once. For example, industrial revolution एक ही बार हुई, others just borrowed it. Okay, or maybe they must have developed it on its own, but then they had the knowledge of it, right? So invention एक ही बार हुआ according to them. ठीक है, then Egypt was the center of civilization. That means culture traits got diffused from Egypt to the rest of the world. And then they one more thing they said, that diffusion and dilution. That means, for example, if I draw a diagram and tell you, let's take that this is one big chunk of area, and there we have these smaller cultures. ठीक है, we have these smaller cultures. So for example, now let me change the color. This is the core place from where the diffusion is happening. ठीक है, so when the culture would go from this to this, culture would go from this to this, and then this is also interacting. Basically everything is interacting with each other, right? So all are interacting with each other, and then it is interacting with like that. So there's a complex web of things happening. ठीक है, so when this culture, for example, gives something to this culture, and then this culture would further give to this culture, there is diffusion that dilution that is bound to happen. It's like Chinese whisper, right? when we play Chinese whisper, what happens? This person says something in the ears of this person will further say something in the ear of this person, and when it will reach many person afterward, the story would have changed. The story as a whole would have changed, because every culture, every person would try and give its own understanding of it, right? So वो कभी भी in its truest sense तो नहीं रह पाता, right? So this is what it says, that diffusion तो होता है, that means cultures borrow from each other, and then those borrowing also gets diluted after some time, after it reaches a certain place. For example, मैं आपको इस example से भी दिखाती हूँ. For example, if this is the culture जहाँ से चीज़ें borrow हो रही है, example कर रहे हैं हम, ठीक है? The areas near this place would have the culture maybe in its truest sense as compared to the areas which are far away from it, right? So जितना pristine form में इनके पास होगा वो culture, they will not have it also, right? Because it has to go so much area, it has to travel, इधर से जाओ, wherever it goes, ठीक है? It will travel so much area, it will take so much time to get diffused to that area, right? So this is what they believe. ठीक है? I hope you understand the basic premise of the school. So now we study Smith. Smith is the first scholar who we are going to study. So he was an extreme diffusionist kind of a person. He believed in this heliocentric theory, and he believed that Egypt was the first place that everything got invented. He believed that natural man, that means the man only, in the Nile Valley got a fortunate chance of the crop barley. That means in a way it is talking about agriculture, that man invented agriculture in the Nile Valley. It started to understand कि agriculture कैसे होता है. With agriculture, many other things were on its way, like pottery, basketry, building houses, domestication of animals. So Neolithic revolution basically it's talking about, right? So now anybody who is not studied 1.8 will not be able to understand this properly. So now I will request all of you who has not watched 1.7 and 1.8, please go watch them and come back. You will have a holistic understanding of this. Okay? So when Neolithic revolution happened, specialization happened, cultures developed, civilizations developed in a way. Okay? So when having accomplished its own culture in Egypt, they set out to explore the world. Okay, उन्होंने अपना culture develop कर लिया, and then they thought it was need to now migrate to the rest of places and just see around, look around. ठीक है? So they started to explore the world, and then the diffusion started to happen. So Smith correlated Egyptian complexes of large stone monuments with other world. So अब now how he said कि diffusion happened, he basically made certain comparisons with other material, non-material aspects of other cultures, right? So he correlated Egyptian monuments with megaliths of England, ठीक है, and called it crude imitations of Egyptian pyramids and mastabas. Now do not worry, I'll just show you the pictures. Now you can see these are the Egyptian monuments, and see how intricately and well beautifully they are beautified also, right? Such intricate details, such beautiful pictures are made on these, right? So they are, you can say, very pretty. And then these are England ka crude imitation, as Smith called it. This was crude imitation of the large stone monuments of Egypt, sorry, right? So you can say कि he is trying to develop a comparison कि how complex is this, how beautiful is this, and then this is just a diluted and diffused version of that. So this is how he is trying to make his point, that Egypt say things must have diluted, and he is giving such examples also. Okay? So one example was this, that he compared the monuments and all over the things with the other cultures and saw that they were just imitations of Egyptian large monuments according to him, right? Then later he studied the Maya pyramids of Mexico, Japanese pagoda, Balinese and Cambodian temples also, and then again compared it with the Egyptian monuments. I'll just show you. For example, these are the Egyptian monuments, and then this is the Maya pyramid of. So again he said that this also resembles something of that of Egypt's monuments, right? So that is what he was talking, that all over the world he saw similar monuments, and then he compared those similar monuments, similar things to Egyptian culture, and then he rooted everything back to yes, Egypt में ही develop हुआ था and then diffused to the other places. And he wrote all of this in his book Origin of Civilization. So now with this you can say कि this theory doesn't hold ground, because A, there were civilizations that preceded Egypt, right? That means his whole premise on which he has based his theory upon is only wrong, because उसने जो evidence दिए हैं they don't hold any relevance, because there were many civilizations that were way before Egypt, right? So how can you say that Egypt was the place where things got evolved and diffused to the other places, right? So his whole theory is refuted on this ground. And then his evidence to show diffusion. Now these explanations are very like you can say superficial explanations. They don't hold any solid ground. Okay? So he didn't have very solid evidences to show how diffusion occurred. He did compare the pyramids of different places, or the monuments of Europe and then monuments of Egypt, but he didn't tell how the diffusion took place, how these things went to that places, right? So he didn't have the evidence for it. So all in all, Smith ka theory was a very extreme theory. It was rejected because it was wrong on many grounds, but one principle of dilution of traits, this was accepted. ये हम मान लेते कि obviously if the diffusion has to take place, it will take a lot of time, and the distance, if the distance is a lot, then the dilution is bound to happen. So this dilution takes place कि diffusion होते 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 it gets diluted also. This proposition was taken. So this was all about the starting. I've just given you the introduction of diffusion, and we have started the British school, and British में हमने we have already done Smith today. We will do Perry and Rivers tomorrow, and I hope you're liking it, guys. I'm very disappointed with the kind of response that I'm getting. I'm putting a lot of effort for all of you. I want you guys to share it. I want you guys to respond, make it a more collaborative effort. I need you guys to comment on the videos, tell me how you like them, and I need your participation in it. So I hope you will start participating now. You will share the videos, you will like the videos. You guys are just watching, not liking the videos. So please guys, like, share and subscribe, and thank you.